How are you today? Welcome to the Intentionally Designed Life. We are in the midst of a series on self-leadership, and we're in the third video now, part 3, our final video. We started our week talking about self-awareness, and then we went into self-discipline, and today we're going to talk about self-forgiveness. So let's jump in, get ready, and really explore this because this is life-changing. So, okay. Recap, self-leadership is leading yourself to a specific purpose, plan, place, or people, right? Self-leadership is made of many small practices. There's lots of things that come into leading yourself, right? Some of it is in an educational capacity, some of it is in promotional capacity, but we're talking about the 3 larger aspects of it in this series. So self-awareness gives you clarity. Clarity is key, right? If you want to move forward, you need to have clarity. You need to have good understanding. Self-discipline gives you focus, right? It hones in on what you're trying to do and allows you to be focused and driven in that capacity in a very disciplined manner. And self-forgiveness gives you permission. Right? Did you hear what I said? Self-forgiveness gives you permission. So permission, that's what we're going to dig into and really talk about. We actually do need to give ourselves permission to move forward. We do. It's a big part of going through the things that we go through. It's a big part of getting to where we want to go is giving ourselves permission. Just as children are constantly looking for permission and discipline and understanding, so do we, but on a very different level, right? We don't need it from someone else. I mean, sometimes we feel like we do, but the truth is we are responsible for granting permission and clarity and understanding to ourselves and discipline to ourselves. We are the responsible ones. So we've talked about clarity already, as we discussed in self-awareness, and hopefully you've taken time to evaluate that and really try to dig into your self-awareness, really try to look at all those aspects, your personality, your behaviors, your circumstances, your relationships, how you take care of yourself, really dig into those. And then in our second video, we discussed self-discipline. And now hopefully you have some focus. You have areas to concentrate on to grow self-discipline, or areas that you're looking to just really be a driving factor. But today we are now going to talk about permission, this last part of it. So let me go ahead and ask you, do you struggle to forgive yourself? Like, have you even really ever thought about that? Do you beat yourself up over and over again and have a really hard time getting past something? Do you hear those self-defeating words, those voices again and again, time and time in your head, right? Just those little voices that are just sitting there talking to you in your head. You know, you can't do this. You shouldn't have done that. How could you have done that? You're an awful person. I mean, just hearing those types of voices, right? Why do you think it is hard to forgive yourself? Why do you think that? Have you thought about that? I'm willing to bet the majority have not. But why do you think it is? Well, first, we are harder on ourselves than anybody else, right? Do you know that? I bet you do. We are harder on ourselves than absolutely anybody else could ever be on us, right? We are our own worst critic, right? We will criticize ourselves faster than anybody else can, and harder than anybody else can, and deeper than anyone else can. And we do not do the work and allow ourselves to move on. We don't. We are really quick to just kind of bury issues, to hide them, not really want to explore them, and just be like, okay, moving on. But we've not really moved on. We have to do work to move on. It's not just a decision. You actually have to put effort into it. But it's all just much easier to ignore it, right? It's just easier to put it aside and just move forward and pretend. And that's what we do, right? Have you been there? I'm willing to bet that you have. Okay, so as I just said, it's so much easier to bury the feelings, the hurt, the guilt. Did I just kind of hit on something there? The guilt that really weighs on us, hinders us, maybe even scares us some, right? Those are the things that we're really struggling with. But here's the truth of the matter, okay? If we do not fix this, if we do not work on this, if we do not truly move forward, like all these things, they don't really go away. They completely come back. They creep up unexpected. All of a sudden, you're back in the same place mentally where you might have been previously and struggling again to figure out what's next. So, I'm going to give you some tools, some tips on how to truly work through an issue, how to forgive yourself, and then how to be able to jump forward in this process of leading yourself. All right? Are you ready? Okay. So, what do we do? The first thing you want to do is you want to acknowledge the issue. Like, you really want to think, what is it that you have to forgive yourself for, right? Maybe you've hurt somebody, intentionally or unintentionally. Maybe it ended a relationship, and it was your actions, and you just kind of stuffed it instead of really kind of acknowledging what you did and what you could have done and how you've hurt somebody, asking them for forgiveness, and then giving yourself permission to forgive yourself and move on. Maybe that's what you've done. Maybe, like I said, you have to acknowledge the issue. Maybe it's been something physical. Maybe it's been something criminal. I mean, I don't know. Not like murder, but maybe you took stuff from the office or something like that, took home some pens and paper, I don't know. But the truth of the matter is, you have to go through a process. You have to acknowledge what it is. Now, most of the time, we're just pretty simple on that. We're just like, oh, well, this is the issue. Yeah, it's never that simple. So if you want to know what the issue is, you've got to ask yourself why. Why do I feel this way? Why is this happening? Why is this going on? And you'll get an answer, but it's probably not the answer. Okay, you have to ask yourself why many, many times, like 3 to 5 times before you go, oh, that's why. You have this just aha moment, just suddenly click, the light bulb goes on, and you recognize that. But that's the process you have to get through to acknowledge the issue. Okay, it's rarely that topical. It's usually something deeper. It's always something deeper. We don't just do things on a topical level. There's always a reason. So acknowledge the issue. Okay, the second thing is focusing on your emotions just for a minute. Okay, once you recognize what the issue is, think about those emotions, really focus on them. Hurt, anger, fear, what's it called? Those are very common ones, but really focus on those emotions and go through them. You've got to go through them. You can't just be like, oh no, all's well. I promise you it is not well, and I promise you if you don't go through them, you are still going to go through them. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. These things will come back if you don't handle them. They will. It's a guarantee, okay? Because nothing ever just kind of leaves the space. It all comes back. Little things are triggers. Big things can be triggers. You have to deal with it for it to be gone. You have to, or it will come back. And usually it comes back when it's not wanted, right? It's not wanted to start with, but it usually comes back at the most inconvenient times, and now you're left dealing with it again. So deal with the emotions, focus on the emotions, but don't stay there. Don't dwell there, right? Put the effort in and then be like, okay, I've got to continue forward, right? I've dealt with the emotions, I dealt with the hurt. Now I've got to continue forward, and I've got to go to the next step. And the next step is number 3. What can you learn from this? It's really important to understand what you can learn from the circumstances, because in the truth of it all, everything is a growing process. Everything is a learning process. So if you can learn, you're less likely to repeat it. Less likely, okay? But you've got to learn from it, and you've got to really recognize what you've learned from all of the mistakes, the issues, the battles, whatever it is. But recognize what you can learn from it, because everything has a learning factor. Okay, so we're going to come into number 4, and I'm just going to tell you straight up, you're going to think I'm a crazy person when I share this if you've not ever heard me say this before. And that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not true. I can be a little crazy. But here's number 4. Have conversations with yourself. Like, we already have these voices in our head, right? We have mental conversations with ourselves all the time. There's no reason you can't have a verbal conversation with yourself in front of a mirror, in a closet by yourself, just talking out loud, right? Have these conversations with yourself. And don't miss this, verbalize out loud your own forgiveness. Verbalize it out loud. When we verbalize things, it makes it more real. When we verbalize things, it helps us process. It helps get things that are in here out here. And guess what? Once we got that flow going, usually that's a good path to moving forward. So I want you to verbalize out loud your forgiveness, right? I know it sounds nuts. I know you're like, you're a crazy person. I think I'm going to click and watch another video now. Hang tight, hang tight. Practice this before you decide if I'm a crazy person. Honestly, this is such a healing process. Okay, I'm telling you to do these because it's absolutely key, right? This releases the feelings, this releases the emotions, this releases the guilt. It releases it by actually verbalizing things out loud. Now, does that mean that there won't be a trigger in the future? No, it doesn't mean that there won't be a trigger, right? Life happens around us, something comes back and you kind of get caught off guard and you're just like, ooh, and you just kind of feel that again. But this takes the power of it away, okay? You may have a minute in the future where it comes back instead of living it. That's significant, okay? So this takes the power of the issue away when you release it verbally. Okay, and number 5 is learn to recognize the voices. Like we know we've got voices in our head. We're women, right? We hear it anyway, but I know men do too. We've got these voices in our head, right? That they're just constantly telling us the negatives, right? How often do you hear a voice in your head going, "Girl, you got this. You go. I know you can do this," right? No, we tend to hear the, "Oh, you can't do that," right? All those little negative thoughts that just kind of take root and hold on a little bit. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to recognize those voices. Like, I want you to listen to them. I know that sounds weird too. Now you're just like, okay, you've hit on some really weird stuff here. I'm out the door. Hang tight, hang tight. So I want you to listen to these voices. And I want you to write down what they're saying. I want you to write down, you should feel bad for this. Nobody will love you. Everybody hates you. Nobody wants to be a part of your life. You're not good enough. Write these things down that come out of your head. And I know they come out of your head. And I know they come out of our heads just, again, because there's just an innate sense of evil in the world. But another thing is, somewhere along the way, somebody may have told you these things and they took root. If you grew up in an abusive childhood, you might have heard these things, in abusive relationships, or even just some people don't know how to be positive. And so they share negative thoughts and they take a hold. They're like, it's not intentionally abusive. They just take hold in our heads. So write these voices out and then counter them. Like where these voices are telling you, you are worthless. Counter it. I am not worthless. I was created for a purpose and a plan. Okay? You are hated. I am not hated. I am loved by the one who loves like no other. Right? If you have nobody else there to love you, you are loved by the one that loves like no other. If you're married, you are loved by your spouse. If you have children, you're loved by your children. If your parents are still living, you are loved by your parents. Right? Counter these arguments out on paper. Why do I tell you to do it on paper? Because sometimes when the voices come back, you might need to refer back to it. The other thing I recommend, like in this world of smartphones and everything else, snap a picture of it, because sometimes maybe you're not where that paper is. But then you can just pull it up on your phone and be like, no, these are not true. This is true. And you can see that in a visual, and visual just will outdo our brain every time, right? Outdo those things that we thought were hardwired in our brain, right? We're countering it and having that visual. You can see what is true versus what's not true. So that's why I tell you to write it out. So a quick recap. 1, acknowledge the issue, right? Really dig deep, get to the issue. 2, focus on your emotions, but just for a minute. Don't stay there. 3, recognize what you can learn from the circumstances. Everything has the ability for learning. Number 4, like, have those conversations with yourself. Verbalize out loud your forgiveness of yourself for the issues. And 5, learn to recognize the negative voices in your head. Write out what they're saying and counter them. Write a counterattack right next to them. 2 columns, boom, 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 and get that out. So another thought, okay, going back down my weird road here, but I promise you it's effective. What if self-forgiveness led to self-compassion, right? Being easier on ourselves. Could you imagine? We're so hard on ourselves. What if we were more compassionate to ourselves, right? How would your life change if you practice self-compassion, right? Maybe you're quick to pour it out on others, but not yourself. How would your life change if you did? Let me ask you these questions. How would your health be affected, right? Does stress eat at you now physically, blood pressure, headaches, weight gain, any of those things, right? How would it be affected if you were not feeling stressed? Okay. How about your emotions, right? Control of your emotions, understanding them. Could you imagine how your emotions would be if you were compassionate on yourself? What if you were compassionate on the choices that you made? Like maybe you would feel more confident and focused. What if you were compassionate about your relationships, like your role in the relationships? Maybe it would feel healthy relationships, guilt-free relationships, if you're compassionate on yourself and you practice self-forgiveness. What about your life? Like, do you see the whole picture here? How one heavily impacts the other? Isn't that amazing? And it does lead to this amazing focus. So self-leadership is leading yourself to a specific place, purpose, plan, people. It's leading yourself there. You have the ability, but you have to do the work, right? Nobody can just drive a car without being behind the driver's seat. You have to do the work. It's up to you. So go lead yourself. Go in a very disciplined, focused way and go lead yourself. Where do you want to go? That's what I want to hear back from you in the comments. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to lead yourself in 2021? I hope you all have an awesome day.